welcome back to another video of CambiHub. And in today's video, we'll be doing IGCSE Computer Science 047 at pseudocodes. Now, this is lesson number 4, chapter number 4 that we'll be doing here. We have made 3 videos already in the series. If you want, you can go to our channel, CambiHub, and then go to the playlist option. There you'll find a playlist 047 at Computer Science, which has all of the computer science videos, including paper 1, worksheets, solved papers, and pseudocode series, everything organized in order to complete your full syllabus. So today's topic is the lesson of this video is, or the chapter name is loops and iterations, right? We'll be studying what are loops, what are iterations, the 3 types of loops that we'll be studying, which is count control loops, which is a for loop, post condition loops, which is repeat until loop, and pre-condition loops, which is while do while loop, right? This is purely based on pseudocodes. We won't be discussing Python here. So let's start without a further ado. As we all know, what does looping mean? Looping means repeating something, right? Or even iterations and loops, these both things mean the same. What is looping, right? It is basically repeating things, right? Loop means things in a repeat. So that's what we'll be doing here. In programming, there might be places where we want to repeat a set amount of code or where we want to repeat something. There we use loops. The first kind of loop that we'll be studying is count control loop, where we know the number of counts the loop needs to repeat. So for loop is known as the count control loop. Why? Because we already know how many times the loop needs to repeat. What is the structure of this? So we'll write for counter, whatever you can give any name to your counter. Counter is going to count the number of times your loop repeats. For counter, we put an assignment arrow 1, 2, whatever the number of iterations you want to repeat, right? And then we write our statements that we want to repeat, and then we write next counter. So this is the syntax for loop. This is how you write a for loop. Now please keep in mind a concept that I'm going to teach you right now. Whenever this counter is there, for example, I want to repeat my loop for 50 times, right? Suppose I want to repeat my loop for 50 times. So I can give my counters value to 1 to 50. If I give my counters value from 1 to 50, my loop is going to run 50 times. However, if I give 0 to 49, then also this loop is going to repeat for 50 times. How? Because 0 is also considered to be a number in programming. Please keep this in mind. 0 also holds a value. So if you count, for example, the loop needs to be repeated 10 times, right? The loop needs to be repeated 10 times. I can either give counters value as 1 to 10, or I can give the counters value as 0 to 10. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0 to 9, sorry. 8, 9, 10, right? Let's see here also. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, if this is the number of times the loop is going to repeat, let's count how many times the loop repeat for 1 to 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the loop is going to run for 10 times. Let's see for this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Here also the loop is going to run 10 times. Why? Because 0 is also considered to be a number in programming. So you can either give your counters value as 1 to 10, or you can give it as 0 to 9. Okay. Now, once you have understood this concept, right, for loop is a cakewalk for you. Why? Suppose, let me give you a question. Store your name in a variable and display it 40 times. So we need to store our name in a variable and we need to display that 40 times. Let's see how we can do this, right? First of all, we would need to declare the variable name, right? So we'll write declare, right, name. This is the variable that I'm creating. We'll declare name as string, right? Why string? Because we're storing alphanumeric text or like text here, right? That's why we're using string. So declare name string. Then I need to store my name into string. So I'm going to store my name, Pranay, into this string. Now the question asks me to display my name for 50 times. Following the syntax of this loop, I'm going to write for, okay, you would also need to declare the counter. So declare counter. What will the counter be? Since it calculates how many times the number is going to repeat, it's going to be a number. So integer. Right? Now I'm going to write for counter 1 to 40. Or I could have also written 0 to 39. For counter 1 to 40, output name. Right? Next counter. So this is going to run my loop for 40 times. Right? This is going to run my loop for 40 times. I hope for loop is pretty clear to you. Right? For loop is pretty clear to you. Let's move on to the next loop, which is a precondition loop. Okay, let's move on to the next kind of loop, which is precondition loop, right? What is precondition loop? It is called the while loop, right? What is the syntax of this? The syntax of this is while a condition, do whatever statements we want to repeat, end while, right? So this is the syntax of while loop. Please note that while loop will always ask for a condition at the starting. So before starting the loop, we ask for the condition. So while loop will check that if this condition is true or not. If this condition is true, then only the loop is going to repeat. As soon as this condition is false, this loop will stop repeating. Right? As soon as this condition is false, this loop will stop repeating. Right? Now let's see the above example, which says that we need to display our name for 40 times. Okay, let's try writing the code for this. Okay, one more thing we need to learn before while loop is, in for loop, we do not need to initialize the counter. What is the meaning of initializing the counter? Initializing means giving the counter an initial value. So if this is my counter, right? Before starting this counter, I would give my counter the initial value of 0 or 1, right? Because we just discussed if I need to repeat my loop for 10 times, my counter's initial value can be 0, right? I can run it from 0 to 9, or my counter's initial value can be 1. I can run it from 1 to 10. However, in for loop, if you see, right, in for loop, there is two things happening. Number one, we are defining the initial value and the final value of the counter at the starting, right? Because we know how many times the counter needs to repeat. However, if we see here, right, we are also incrementing the counter. What is the meaning of incrementing the counter? Since the counter keeps a track of how many times the loop repeats, as soon as the loop will finish, right, the first time loop will run, I will add a 1 to my counter. So I will add counter is equal to counter plus 1. I will assign the value of counter to be the current value of counter plus 1. So I'll keep on adding 1 to the counter's value as the loop repeats. This is going to count how many times the loop is repeating. So for example, if the loop repeated first time, counter's value is 0 right now. So as soon as it repeated first time, the counter's value is going to be 1. Then it repeats for the second time. So counter's value plus 1 is going to be 2. Then it repeats for the third time. So counter's plus 1 value is going to make it 3. So that's how the counter keeps a track of how many times the loop is repeating, right? However, this is automatically done in the for loop. In while loop, there is no such model. So we need to initialize the counter ourselves, and we also need to increment the counter ourselves. So let's write the updated syntax of this while loop. to write updated syntax, right, first is initializing the counter with an initial value, right? Then we start with while, the condition, do, the statements that needs to be repeated. Then before ending this, we will increment the counter with 1. So counter's current value, we will store counter plus 1. Whatever is the current value, we'll store plus 1 to that. And then end while. Right? So this is the syntax of while loop. Now let's see the question. The same question, it says store your name in a variable and display it 40 times. So we'll write the same code here. Obviously, we'll write declare name, which is going to be string. We're going to declare our counter, which is going to be an integer, right? Then we will initialize our counter with an initial value. Suppose 0, right? Because I need to run, suppose 1, because I need to run it for 40 times. So I'll use 1 to 40. So initial value of the counter is 40. I'll say while counter is less than equal to 40, do, right? While my counter is less than equal to 40, right? While it is less than equal to 40, I want my loop to run. As soon as it goes above 40, my loop should stop. So hence I'll write while counter is less than equal to 40, I want my loop to repeat. So my loop is going to repeat. I will output my name, right? Obviously, I forgot to give my name, right? So I'll give it right now, right? I will store Pranay to the text, right? Obviously, this needs to be double quotes because this is text, right? I'll store my name Pranay into the variable. Then I'm going to output my name. Then I'm going to do counter is equal to counter plus 1. This is where I increment my counter, and I'm going to end my while loop. Now you will ask that in while loop, we say that the loop will only run if the condition is true. So here we do not know the set number of iterations. In for loop, we knew the set number of iteration, how many times the loop needs to repeat. But in while loop also, in this particular example, we knew that we need to repeat a loop for 1 to 40 times. So what is the difference between for loop and while loop? See, in this specific example, we already knew how many times we need to repeat the loop. For example, if I give you a condition, until the score is greater than some value, right? The condition is until my score is greater than some value, I want my loop to repeat. And for example, this is your question. So here I do not know when the score is going to be greater than that value. So then I have a condition. When I don't know the set number of iterations and I only know a condition that while this condition is true, I want my loop to repeat, then I'll use a while, right? Let's move on to the third type of loop, which is post condition loop. This loop is called the repeat until loop. Right? This loop is called the repeat until loop. Now this loop stops as soon as the condition becomes false. Stops as soon as the condition becomes false. Now you must be asking that while loop will also run when the condition is true, and repeat until loop is also going to run when the condition is true, because it says that the loop is going to stop when the condition is false. So what is the difference between both of them? We'll just understand that in a moment, right? Once we understand both of the loops. Now let's see the syntax of repeat until loop. The syntax of repeat until loop is going to be initializing our counter with an initial value, right? We'll initialize our counter with an initial value. We will write repeat, right? We will write repeat. Then whatever we want to repeat, whatever is the condition, the statements that we want or the code that we want to repeat, we're going to write that. Then we're going to write, then we're going to increment the counter. Counter is equal to counter plus 1, right? Because here also we do not know the set number of iterations. Here also, this loop also works according to condition. If the condition is true, then this loop is going to keep on repeating itself. So counter is going to be counter plus 1, and then we are going to write until the condition, right? This is the syntax of repeat until loop. Now the first difference that you should notice between these two loops, while loop and repeat until loop, is in while loop we check for the condition at the start, right? We check for the condition at the start of the code. But in repeat until, we check the condition at the end, right? We check the condition at the end. Now let's see an example. Let's solve the same example here, and then I'm going to explain the major difference between repeat until loop and while loop. So let's understand the difference, and then I'm going to explain. Let's understand the question. Then I'll explain the major difference between repeat until and while loop. So the question says I want to repeat my name for 40 times. So 1 to 40 times is going to be my iteration. Okay. Let me declare my name, right, as string. Let me declare my counter as integer. Let me store my name into the string. Right? Then let me initialize the counter to its initial value, which is 1, because I need to repeat it through 1 to 40. Right? Then I'm going to write repeat I'll write output name, right, until, sorry, I'll increment my counter plus 1 until counter is greater than 40. As soon as the counter becomes greater than 40, as soon as it reaches 41, the loop should stop, right? So this is how I will do the repeat until loop. Now, what is the major difference between repeat until and while loop? If you try to notice the syntax of both the loop, the syntax goes like, while this is true, please do this. Whereas repeat until goes like, repeat this statement until this statement becomes false. Now, what is happening here? If you see, while loop is checking for the condition, right? And then it is running the loop. Suppose this condition is false. While loop is not going to run the loop, right? If the condition is false at the start, it's checking for the condition at the start. If this condition somehow it is false, while loop will not run at all, right? While loop is not going to run even once if this condition gets false. Whereas repeat until, it will run at least once and then check for the condition. If this condition is false, then it will not move ahead. But it will at least run once because we are checking the condition at the last of the each iteration, right? So if that iteration gets false, then it is not going to run from the next time. But for once, it is always going to run. While loop will not run if the condition is not true. Repeat until will run for at least once, and then it will think, okay, if this condition is true, then I'll continue ahead for the next iteration. Otherwise, it will always run one iteration. So if you have to write for theory, what is the difference between repeat until and while loop? It will at least run once. It will not run at all if the condition is false, right? So this is all about IGCSE loops that you need to know, right? This is all about the IGCSE loops. I hope that you like this video, right? One last thing, when you look at the for loop, right? When you look at the for loop, okay, there is no arrow here. Please make sure I just use that arrow to give an explanation, right? Now try this question once again, right? When you are done with this, when you are done with this video, try this question once again. Thank you everyone for watching this video. This is Pranay Arora from CambiHub that brought this video for you. This is Pranay Arora signing off. Before I sign off, let me tell you a few important details. We have a learning portal for CambiHub. You'll find the link in the description also. You'll also find it on your screen right now. This is the link for our learning portal. You'll find all sources of all sort of resources, past papers, worksheets, notes, right? And book PDFs and everything on that on our website. Just go to the link, choose your board, right? Go to the three bars on the top, choose your board, choose your subject, and you can find all of these subjects there, right? You can also join a WhatsApp community, which is a student community, a WhatsApp groups for several subjects, of which the link is there in the description, right? You can talk to people, we can talk to students just like you. You can also answer each other's doubts, and it's a peer-to-peer matrix. It's such a good application, such a good forum. So if you want, you can go and visit. For business inquiries, you can mail us at support@cambihub.com. And if you have any doubts, then obviously you can put it in the comments below. I'll try to answer most of your doubts. But if you want to mail me, this is my mail ID, pranay@cambihub.com. Thank you, everyone. I'll meet you in the next lecture.